Today we've got for you over 2 hours worth of DreamWorks scene analysis and breakdowns. We used to run a scene breakdown series on this channel, and DreamWorks was oftentimes some of the best examples of absolute animation cinema. And so here is our collection from the studio showcasing why in all sorts of examples they were truly some of the best. Here is combined all of our coverage over the years of the scenes that changed DreamWorks. And I hope you enjoy. You know, I've been holding off on making this video because The Bad Guys isn't out on DVD yet, and with it being a cinema release, I can't find any more footage than just the trailers. Except, apparently, I've been living in the days of old, because it turns out most movies are available pretty quickly on streaming sites before even the DVD release. So what the hell am I waiting for? It's the scene that changed The Bad Guys. DreamWorks, after a lengthy run of corporate rearrangements and a release of films with debatable quality, has finally come around with a giant W in The Bad Guys. Catching our eyes for its unique art style, solid sense of momentum in the animation choices, and hey, the narrative's incredibly fun too. The people like it a lot. And there are many outstanding scenes to highlight as the best. The intro chase scene, the first heist sequence, the cat up the tree scene, a million gerbils, the ending, but the one I want to talk about this time around isn't the emotive dip or a heart-to-heart. Instead, it's an action scene. As one of the biggest successes this film achieves is its quality of animation and all the little flares within them, not to mention the creativity. So let's showcase them in the most Bad Guys scene there is in The Bad Guys. It's the reveal of the Crimson Paw. We land ourselves in prison. These are the bad guys after all, though leading up to it has been an hour and 1 minute of narrative. The bad guys are recruited to try and be good guys, they do good things, our protagonist Mr. Wolf is starting to turn and sabotages the bad heist the rest of the team were planning in secret, only to be double-crossed by the one who recruited them in the first place. There you go, you're caught up. So now they're imprisoned for a crime they didn't commit, with a leader who's turned to the dark side, light side. And Snakey here, Mr. Snake, wait, are they all seriously just named as Mr. and Mrs. Animal? Huh. Is the least impressed. It's the confrontation breakup section of the movie, and the crux of the whole premise.
Some people are scary, and some people are scared.
It's a society of animals where species dictate your path in life to a significant degree. And being a literal tarantula, shark, piranha, snake, and wolf, this is just the cards they've been dealt with. But with Mr. Wolf's new revelation...
Maybe I don't want to be a... What? A bad guy? Don't want to be a bad guy anymore, huh?
It heats up until Wolf says maybe the gang truly are holding him back.
Take it back!
And now it begins. Snake lunges at Wolf, coiling his body around him midair with a little bit of smear framing halfway to really highlight that sense of motion. Not to mention using the creativity of a snake's body to be able to stretch it however they want to, having his face linger up and above as he delivers his line.
Take it down!
In one second move, giving us a chunk of creativity as well as merging 3D CG animation with traditional 2D animation techniques in there a little. The rest of the gang are stunned as the officers now have to intervene, having a particularly animated running cycle as well as teeth that pop from small molars to a real mouthful. Kinda reminds me of the Turning Red art style, but it's still nice to see a pull away from the norm DreamWorks movies have been covering for a while now. I'm always in favor of something refreshingly new. The fight continues with squeezes and punches until they're split up with...
Prison is no place for fighting!
Tell that to him.
Energetic, succinct, and gotta love the little addition of the villain glancing at each other in sync. And all those expressions. But of course, it's time for the reveal of what we're really here for. And the animation really goes ham here. The 2D impact flares, the anime-style motion lines, the bright bloom to glow them up and add to the silhouette design they've got going on. The smash cut to a full black and white sheen, it all comes together to make an impact of an entrance. All about speed and presentation. Not to mention the smoke effect and hero pose, followed by a 90-degree turn as they look past the camera. There are so many elements coming together for this small micro moment, whilst editing it together to feel as grounded as possible. It's meant to feel like a single fluid motion of a shot, though there's a match cut in the tilt upwards, and there's that shaky cam perspective when they're on the ground. Watch it again. Oh, just beautiful.
What?
And it only continues. Let's list all we can see. More 2D impact lines like a comic book movie, or like the little flares of Mitchells vs. Machines. I guess it's the new trend of hybrid animation techniques. Giant signaling from the guards like real cartoon characters, which is just a lot of fun to see. Another hidden cut as the camera swirls from one door to another. Smear framing as she ducks under the swing and sprints away from the camera. It chases after her to build the momentum of the scene as she bolts into action, closing in when she reaches guard 2, and this time going over the top. Both times we see the guard's reactions right in the foreground, but now the guard is keeping up, turning to keep their head on target as we follow the eye line to the Crimson Paw 2. The guard now blurs as they're not the focus in this motion anymore, putting in a digital depth of field to direct your eyeline. And swinging again, look at this glowing trail line, so dynamic, and it's a smear frame, and it really delivers the power of each attack coming their way. And again the other way as she swings out of frame. Finally overbalanced as her foot implies, all the while the paw cartwheels right to the camera, covering up the whole frame, ready for a cut. And all that in just... Hey look, it's a cut! Time for a whole new approach for the action sequence. Now we're wide as Crimson Paw is back flipping feet into the air, continuing with those smear frames for every little bit of limb motion. Though it's not classical smear frames in the way of entire limbs appearing, for the most part it's just a little bit of running color swerving from the motion and leaving a trail. But sometimes there are phantom arms. Anyway, now we're getting environmental, using the guard's own tie to spin them round and kick them a few times. And with that final kicking, posing out as much as possible as a few teeth pop out and they fall right back into a cell. A mission directive has been established. But how good is an action scene really if it's so one-sided? Let's add a little tension with a little mini loss midway through. And we can see it coming with this preemptive shot of Guard 3's plan, pushing out the baton sideways with all the action lines, readying to headlock them. And it works for but a second, kicking out both legs for a bit of imbalance before finally having to use those arms to get some work in. Elbowing them in the gut for the most expressive facial features we've seen yet, completely winding them. And the tables have turned so quickly once again. But let's keep it creative. Seems to be the shining factor of this movie after all. Screw it, let's use the guard's own shirt this time to blind them, cover their face and roll them into that same cell. All the while the camera is spinning around the subject. This is great direction in motion right here. Excuse the pun. Dynamic to witness and creative too. And hey, there's the bad guys stunned in the background. Even the baton is rolling through with the occasional full circle trail line. But in keeping momentum up, our next piece interacts within that same shot. Guard 2 is sprinting back into frame for the camera to follow. Doesn't even need to finish their act in this shot. Just being there as an establishment works to make everything feel so much more in sync and certainly helps keep your eyes on the screen. This time for the right reasons, and Crimson simply throws them over the top of them, using the guard's momentum against them. Look at that brief look of shock from her, as the paw resumes to sweep the legs of a fourth guard, baton spinning again. You know, I'm not even sure if they actually hit or if this is just a fake out to trip them up. Either way, sweet. And now another move, Crimson Paw is now rolling along the floor. Every single move they do being wildly different from the next, so you really can't predict them. And it's certainly a way for the animators to show off with the prompt they've got. Outstanding so far. Like, who would have predicted that? Not to mention the motion of the kick that follows. It takes a single frame to reach their face, and then it lingers for several frames to really sell the impact of that hit if the expression wasn't telling enough already. And then a roll over the body for an extra flair, of course. Welcome to Halfway. Now that I've realized new movies are available pre-DVD, I'm probably gonna make more of these, so subscribe and tell me what you want us to cover next. You get the idea. Time for a hint of narrative. The bad guys are watching in shock as everything explodes in front of them. A focus on them before bringing us right back to it with a small camera motion to the guard on their right, charging valiantly. Also, without much thought, judging by their body language, but that's all part of the fun, really. Yeah, that was to be expected. And a super fun way to present the events, impossibly instant, but it gets the point across. So what's next this time? Another guard screaming in the foreground as now we've got some fancy bat work. Crimson Paw keeping their face obscured for dramatic effect as they block hits and lock the guard behind his back. Fully expanding now to use their arms fully, as well as their legs for that kickoff. And without fail, those next two batons are spinning, of course. Literally every single one has done so far. Even the first, see? It's just a lot more fun that way. Appropriate response. And if you don't confront them, you won't be injured, I guess. Great advice for the scaredy cat on the right there. Next guard's given his back to the audience as the camera shakes an over-the-shoulder shot of him, tilting up as he looks up to the paw leaping up into the air. An intimidating move considering all the context they've just been blessed with. What a twist! All the variety at play, and the camera highlights it all the more with a drop down to their level and a zoom on their crotch in a kid's movie. That's technically true. Though me watching this at 10% speed makes me feel like the belt animation is out of sync with their hands. Also, do most belts solidify at the end like this one does for a moment? Still, with the gag achieved, Crimson is chuffed with himself, and the guard's act of leaping into pose is what throws them off balance. Great stuff. And of course, the batons are off again. Man, is it because I'm watching this so slowly, or is she not even looking at him? Anyway, I love how even the boot is spinning for added effect, as the guard lands with the rest in that one cell. Impact flare on landing. Only two left. These guys. What do you do against an enemy that isn't fighting aggressively for once? Well, they've established they're on the move. We get a reactionary shot from the Crimson Paw looking in their general direction. The guards are now left bickering between themselves in the hopes of escaping, as the Paw uses that well-established shoe from earlier to kick up to level, swinging with all their might and all the camera's attention to propel that boot forwards. The cam goes slow-mo, moves even closer to the point of impact, action lines everywhere, before switching to this super wide-angle perspective, tracking it as it hurls ahead. I like how the earlier guard spots it mid-trajectory. That's just so fun. And then it cuts to a static side angle to really demonstrate the result, pinging them both with those wide impact flares at record pace. Seriously, that's one frame to hit between the two of them. And they fall in the most angular of poses, and the boot just rubbing it in too. Just such cartoony goodness. And with that, they lock them in and call it an action sequence. Now, I'm not done covering it just yet, but this sequence alone just acts as the pinnacle topic piece to really highlight what ended up making the bad guys so great. The flares of it all. It's so directionally inclined with a fantastic animation aesthetic that benefits all the more through the pure creativity pumped into every moment. Always unpredictable and not afraid to just have some fun with the cartoony grounding. And of course, it's been a crime that I haven't mentioned the soundtrack underneath this whole thing. Having such a stark motif and instrument.
What?
Kicking off many of the motions in sync. Listen to this again. And knowing when to pause at tactical times too. And only to end right back at that motif with... Yes, it turns out it was that one Fox character all along. Not established in this video, but she's the governor of California. Very much good guy aristocrat up until now. Especially with that pronoun fake out at the start.
Tell that to him.
Now she's got something to say, but first we need a direct introduction, because apparently all this wasn't enough. The Crimson Paw is a character briefly mentioned at the start of the film, described as the perfect thief that got away with it all, and with this movie taking comic book influences, it's time for a Spider-Verse style backstory dump.
Wait a sec, you're the Crimson Paw?
Classic freeze frame headshot title.
The Queen of Cons?
A simple fade transition that works especially well in animation, since this shot is technically impossible, realistically. And then...
Acrobatic Swiss Army knife?
This is your go-to high-style comic book effect, splitting your frame up into literal panels, showing off multiple perspectives at the same time, and even having them swoop in one panel at a time. It's pretty commonly done, but it's oh so dynamic. And then as she's running off, we get this unneeded but well-appreciated moment of pausing amongst the moon, a real keyframe spot to burn into our minds, before smearing the whole frame through the motion, obscuring the camera and match-cutting to the tilt downwards back to the prison. What a beat.
Guess I'm still the best bad guy the world has ever seen. At least I used to be.
Unfortunately, I checked and we don't actually see this specifically happen. Though, to be fair, this sequence is fast enough, so we wouldn't have noticed it anyway. That entire action scene was just 1 minute long. And then, as the climax to the location, naturally, the alarms all blare off and every guard under the sun comes to make an appearance. It's over the top, unrealistic, but boy is it so much fun. First it's a reaction shot, then a first-person view to see the confrontation personally, and then a bird's eye view to get the full scale. Perfect escalation tactics. And all to just end with... Jesus Christ, that ground floor of guards even jumped up to her. What a dynamic circular shot. Ending with a punch to the camera for a sweet smash cut to safety. And from that point, it's all back to dialogue and narrative from there. The scene starts with an argument between Snake and Wolf, and it ends with...
You can count on us.
There is no us.
Oh yeah, relationship consequences kinda stick. All this leading up to a good guy path can still be subverted by the personal narrative on the side. The action may keep your attention, but the narrative still has its tricks. Also, side note here, I think it's a really cool animation choice they went with for Snake's teeth. Look at this.
That out there, I'm just a scary, good-for-nothing monster.
Switching between normal teeth and fangs depending on the mood and intonation. Really smart. Anyway, the gang split up and the conflict continues. That was the scene that changed the bad guys. It's your classic plot twist reveal, hyping you up with an incredibly imaginative action scene and demonstrating so many of the great parts that make the bad guys such a successful film. All the while turning the narrative around for the emotive core of the story and the conflict of the group. It's the best scene in the whole runtime for me, and hopefully my gushing over it lets you see why, too. It's Shrek. This movie has been watched and rewatched, reviewed and remixed in every which way. I feel from melting it down and dissecting it into memes alone has made it so we have immortalized practically every single scene in this whole movie. So many moments have become repurposed for something that I imagine we all just subconsciously rewatch all of Shrek every year through osmosis alone. So trying to pinpoint what scene I want to break down for this series is almost difficult for all the wrong reasons, as I feel like I know most of these scenes too well. So whilst you've seen Ogre Like Onions, or The Muffin Man, The Big Wedding, or Lord Farquaad's animated penis, today we're gonna pull things back to perhaps one of the least memeified scenes in the original. It's when the movie takes itself the most seriously and strikes at the thematic meaning behind this entire movie. At some campsite, up on a cliff looking up at stars, Donkey and Shrek have a late night talk, as Fiona hides away in a little cave corner.
That one. That's Throwback, the only ogre to ever spit over 3 wheat fields.
As we come down from the stars to look upon our fresh-faced duo boys. The last scene was at this exact same spot, just earlier in the day, hence the cross dissolve. This is the setup for your classic heart-to-heart. If this wasn't a parody production of your standard fairy tale formula. Of course, it's gonna Shrek it up a little bit, as our characters pull out constellations.
Hey, can you tell my future from these stars?
Well, the stars don't tell the future, Donkey. They tell stories.
It's weird, especially through the lens of the internet. Shrek is a very memeified character. His online presence is beyond a caricature at this point, so to hear him talking almost philosophically is admittedly giving a little bit of whiplash, but here he is. Talking from a place of maturity and intelligence, he's gonna get all spiritual on us about the tales behind the stars.
Look, there's Bloodnut, the flatulent. You can guess what he's famous for.
All right, now I know you're making this up.
Alright, never mind. It's a fart joke. How very ogre. In every line that he spells, he's parodying the more classical traits you would expect a story to take, given the same circumstances and scenarios that its characters find themselves in.
No, look. There he is, and there's the group of hunters running away from his stench.
All the while, we have Donkey here looking legit cursed. I don't know if it's because they just have him lying straight along the floor, but like, is this a new model for him? He just looks so weird with his perfectly straight neck. It's like I'm looking at an animatronic, and it almost tickles me how much he expresses with his face in this strange pose. See? He's looking over so hard over there. I can't unnotice in this scene anymore. Anyway.
Man, that ain't nothing but a bunch of little dots.
You know, Donkey, sometimes things are more than they appear.
Here it is. The main crux of the point of this movie. It is the whole don't judge a book by its cover routine. Sometimes things are more than they appear. A message that applies to so many aspects of this movie. Fiona is more than just a princess, she is an ogre by night. Cursed thanks to the spell from back when she was young. Lord Farquaad, I still cannot believe they got away with that name, never is quite as tall as you first presume him to be. Donkey speaks, I guess. And of course, Shrek. Always seen as the hideous monster, is in fact a friendly guy once you get right down to the core of him. It's just an offhanded comment at the moment since Shrek is genuinely just concerned about Donkey's lack of vision with the stars, but it comes from a place of mild grievance over how he's been treated in his life. Maybe a heart-to-heart is occurring here tonight. Maybe not.
Forget it.
Still, the act of lying up at the night sky still puts a mild smile on the big guy's face. Or it's a weird animation thing. We are still dealing with 2001 here.
Hey, Shrek. What we gonna do when we get out swamp anyway?
Our swamp?
And now we're watching at this admittedly beautiful angle up at the stars. It's not exactly a compositing first, but how often are there really stargazing scenes? And how many of them are able to angle themselves like this by being up on a cliff? This kind of shot feels like it would line up with some lo-fi or vaporwave Simpsons edit overlay on it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the lines are just adding fuel to the conflict, with Donkey being his usual stupid self, and Shrek keeping himself guarded as the solo act in this world.
You know, when we through rescuing the princess and all that stuff.
We? Okay, there's no we. There's no our.
And so, ruining the artsy moment, we pull way further in Shrek's side as he clarifies our slightly more rude conversation topic. Shrek is in all of this for him and him alone. He's always been a loner-type character, and he's continuing to keep his barriers up. Occasionally shot reverse shotting to Donkey's mirror composition, looking a little less weird at this angle now. Oblivious and confident. Both pretty neutral in regards to angles, though Shrek takes up way more space on his shots. Probably because he's just big. Or he's more heated about this subject.
There's just me and my swamp. And the first thing I'm gonna do is build a 10-foot wall around my land.
Oh. I didn't realize Shrek's politics were like that. This movie truly transcends time. What even is the best response to that kind of declaration?
You cut me deep, Shrek. You cut me real deep just now.
Oh, so that's what we all should have said. But yeah, this line I feel is probably one of the weirder lines in the whole movie to me. It's not so much that it's out of character, but it's just not quite the tone that I think Donkey would have by the end of the franchise. It feels very much like an early character design thing. His response to being insulted is a weird neutral one of more just an excuse to use some slang, but whatever. The shot looks nice. Blurred background, the warm campfire on one side of Donkey. It's decent. But of course, what is a lot more fitting is Donkey prying at absolutely anything.
Hey, you know what I think? I think this whole wall thing is just a way to keep somebody out.
No.
So now the cameras have swapped from neutral to entirely on Donkey's perspective of the scene layout. The camera is posed from the direction that Donkey just was, and Shrek is turned away from us. Even in response, we don't see his face. As Shrek has started closing up on Donkey, he has compositionally closed up on us too. But Donkey's exactly the type of character who's not very good with closed doors, and he'll just continue to pry everything open.
Are you hiding something?
Never mind, Donkey.
Oh, this is another one of those onion things, isn't it?
And then Shrek turns away again, away from Donkey and towards us. We're now switching to Shrek's perspective. It won't teach us any new answers, but it will highlight how annoying Donkey is. First, it's a closer up on Shrek as he starts to feel more tense from the brewing interrogation. It's a lot less casual feeling the closer the camera tightens in. And then as he turns back to the night sky again, the thing that gave him some nice solace earlier, we switch to his actual point of view, ready for an upside-down invasive donkey head to ruin the very thing that brought joy before. It's the most literal sense of Donkey getting in the way and disrupting Shrek from the peace he has clearly been craving since the very start of the movie. And Shrek is the type of person with a short fuse. These two are the perfect follies to each other's character traits.
No, this is one of those drop it and leave it alone things.
The camera's switching to Donkey's point of view now. Honestly, the camera really is sticking to neutral in tone across the whole scale of this movie, as when it does choose to take sides, so to speak, it then flips sides just as regularly to keep the balance. This is just two juggernaut personalities clashing. We don't need to agree or disagree with either of them. But from this angle, you can really see the glow on Shrek's teeth and his angry eyes right center of the frame. Interesting they left so much headroom for the entire log pillow to be in view.
Why don't you want to talk about it?
Why do you want to talk about it?
As everything the two debate about splits into twos. Each sponse gets a response, but whilst Donkey remains pretty calm and just nagging incessantly without any awareness of his boundary stepping, Shrek is clearly getting more emotive as it gets to him. It's a subject that clearly strikes something within him, and he's always had his guard up. Now's the chance to finally peel away a little bit of that shell, and he's afraid to, but he's gonna have to. He is talking to Donkey here.
Well, why are you blocking?
I'm not blocking.
Oh, yes, you are.
Camera shots getting faster and faster as this interrogation continues. No matter where Shrek turns, he'll always be approached since he is sleeping just out in the middle of nowhere. And honestly, he will never get that privacy when sleeping ever again. But also, there's some sneaky cutting going on here, as Shrek's turnovers have been getting faster and faster until it is practically entirely cropped out now. Switching us to the first side-on for this argument. The camera has met us in the middle, as Shrek somewhat meets with Donkey in the middle too, with a threat.
Donkey, I'm warning you.
Who you trying to keep out? Just tell me that, Shrek. Who?
As he now finally lifts up from his lie down to rise up against Donkey in direct confrontation. But threatening Donkey never works out, and he keeps pushing. Even as the camera switches to a high angle on Donkey, he doesn't falter, always pushing for more of an answer now that he's curious. Light-hearted, slapstick, but aggressively refusing to back down. Until Shrek finally snaps. Who is he keeping out?
Everyone, okay?
Oh, now we getting somewhere.
Shrek has finally burst as we've hit the target of an issue that defines and spoils all of Shrek's life. As he sees it, it is him against the world. And what better way to present it than by this lonely shot of Shrek? And nothing but the stars. Perhaps the only companions he's ever had back at the swamp that haven't bothered him. Maybe that's why he was so pleasant and informed about them earlier. He stargazed at the swamp or something. But yes, this angry shot just looks angrier when you have him staring down at you like this, emblazoned in front of the blaze, and leaning in incredibly closely to the camera. It is confrontation manifest. Yet it comes from a place of weakness and vulnerability. And yet Donkey is unfazed, just happy to make progress. Threats are ineffective.
Oh, for the love of Pete.
And for this brief moment, our third character contributes to the frame. Fiona is with them after all at this point in time, but she's in hiding since it is nighttime. And the boys are pretty loud out here. It's just a viewing out to see that they're okay or check for safety reasons, cascading in shadows so as to only preview what's going on with her, as she onlooks from behind her door over a third of the frame. It lightens the drama as we're no longer in poking distance of Shrek's nose, whilst it also makes for another pretty shot against that perfect full moon for Shrek to storm off in front of.
What you got against the whole world anyway, huh?
Look, I'm not the one with the problem, okay? It's the world that seems to have a problem with me.
And flipping the Fiona perspective, now she's just a speck in the far distance, and right on time as the boys are both looking outwards to the moon now. Donkey up close to us with more of that firelight as Shrek sits on the edge in front of the supermoon. Emblematic for lines like, "The world that seems to have a problem with me," and from just that alone, we have the crux of Shrek's disgruntlement. It's all about his identity as an ogre and his place in society. We know him as the loner in the middle of a swamp, but perhaps that was the location that was pinned to him rather than the one he chose. Regardless, it's an even more stark composition to set up for your emotional heart-to-heart. I mean, you know I've had to use it for the thumbnail. And who'd have expected it? In a movie about a big green ogre, what a juxtaposition. But it's the point of the movie. Why shouldn't it go with him? He's still a person like everybody else, with opinions and emotions too.
People take one look at me and go, "Ah, help, run! A big, stupid, ugly ogre."
Shrek's vent here comes from a place of anger. It's a disparity of fairness, and he's the victim, and he has a short fuse for it. He's naturally a mad person, which only contributes more to painting him as that scary monster he would otherwise hope to thwart. But then as the outer layer of anger and confrontation subsides, we then capture the next expression of Shrek's character, more real and to the core this time.
They judge me before they even know me. That's why I'm better off alone.
Kinda painted with the more childish language to be clear to the young ones in the audience, you know, all of us once. But the point is still there. Shrek as the strong, the brave, the scary, and the grotesque is vulnerable here for perhaps the first time. It's not that nothing affects him, it's that he puts on a front and responds to a world that has already dictated his place in it. The supermoon, no longer a bright focus to shine optimism out of, but just the darkness of the starry sky and only a hint of that fireplace glow. Shrek's face is lit well, but that's for us to see the sadness all the better as he opens up to us all for the very first time. A new bonding piece for Donkey's friendship to grow from, and a sense of emotional transparency that Fiona can resonate with too, way back at the cave. And with Shrek more exposed than usual, it's time for Donkey to mature up and react, joining him on this artistic moonshot. Shrek may have felt alone all his life, but he's not alone right now, and he has at least one companion right by his side in this beautiful composition, for once, ready to hear whatever he wants to say. Or I guess doesn't want to say too.
You know what? When we met, I didn't think he was just a big, stupid, ugly ogre.
It's not a profound perspective, it's just reusing Shrek's words in a way that proves him wrong, showcasing how Donkey is different to the average person, for he's not scared of him upon contact. It's an excuse for relief on Shrek's part that he doesn't have to hate the entire world, and that there are people who will accept him. There is progress being made in Shrek's life that can be potentially all for the better, and it seems he understands that.
Yeah, I know.
It's not exactly a big grand thank you, but it is a form of gratitude from Shrek, told in a more reserved way, but he's clearly not as heated as he was before. Whether that's from finally expelling the words or for Donkey's response, the fact of the matter is he's calmed down. And he's got company, bringing us right back to the very start of the scene, looking out to the stars, a little closer as friends than they were before.
So, are there any donkeys up there?
Well, there's, Gabby.
As we literally revert back to the age-old conversation of what stories can be seen in the stars. Shrek having something else to explain about, or just make up for fun, whilst Donkey seems back on board again. More stories to hear out of a bunch of little dots, since perhaps, sometimes things are more than they appear. This whole outburst being evidence of that. Though this story still has to have a little bit of banter to it, or reality.
The small and annoying.
Okay, I see it now. Yeah, the big shiny one, right there, right?
They're right back to their usual roles in this dynamic, a duo of unexpected circumstances, basking in the beautiful night sky, closer than ever, as Fiona gets to watch the remnants of an emotionally vulnerable aspect of these newbies she only just met. It's something endearing. It's how Shrek does a heart-to-heart, a little different in the middle there, but the outcome by the end is much the same.
That one there?
That's the moon.
Oh, okay.
And as the camera pulls back, we cross-dissolve once again over to daytime for the next day. It was an eventful night, but a good one. Don't linger on the argument part. Shrek scenes have practically everywhere been done to death, and unless I pick a scene that literally has no substance to pick through, I think this is the next best underrated scene to dissect. Once it got started, practically every line started to sound like one of those philosophical lo-fi edits. Take the sound and plug it on top of those two cliff shots and you basically have a whole video there. In fact, if I search Shrek lo-fi right now, I bet I'll hear that judge me before they know me line in there, right? Yeah, exactly, there it is. By a guy called Kijugo. That particular line is a minified meme of its own, but so much of the rest of this could do with the lo-fi treatment as well, I imagine. Maybe someone will make it happen one day. Because Shrek memes, they will never end. The scene that changed Kung Fu Panda is this one. A moment of optimism against the obvious hurdle this whole movie has been about. How on earth does a panda become a master of Kung Fu? I never got around to seeing the sequels of this movie, and oddly enough, I'm not even sure if I even ever finished this one. I only remember seeing the first half in school classes all the time, or something like that. But nevertheless, we're here. Thanks, Sean Holiday, for technically a suggestion. And in case you too are a little rusty on the Kung Fu Panda plot up to this story beat, here it is. Po is a panda, and seemingly highlighted as the next dragon warrior by accident. But with clear drive and a go-ahead from Master Oogway, Po is crammed through all sorts of trainings in preparation for Tai Lung's evil return. And he is failing at every step, missing the social cues and the physical. It's honestly quite a sad watch for the first hour of this film as you just watch a guy consistently and constantly taking L's. That is until we come to a revelation on the Po front.
Look at you.
In classic cartoony fashion, Po defies all logic and awakens a secret strength whenever the end goal is food. And when simply being told there are almond cookies on the top shelf, Po instantly reaches a state where they are
10 feet off the ground and have done a perfect split.
It is a great stride in the right direction. Perfect considering Master Oogway literally just vanished into a gust of peach blossom leaves. And so with Shifu finally coming to this revelation, he beckons Po to take it further.
Come with me.
It's time for the training montage. First up to the highest point on this mountain away from the temple, as this is a sacred place where Kung Fu supposedly began in the first place, where Oogway first learned as well. And one bit of importance exposition with some fantastic imagery later, we come to the montage. First, it's sit-ups on a tree, shown in first person so we can see Po's drive, trying to reach a bowl of dumplings. It's simple, it's silly, it's to the point. And of course, the tree breaks in these early stages. But Po's still good enough to rescue the food. Shame about himself. Moving on, we scale up to a test of defense, as Shifu won't allow Po a moment to eat with a bowl in his hands. Again, from Po's sort of perspective, as we remain fixed on him and Shifu becomes just a blur on the screen, hitting from the sides seemingly out of nowhere. But you can see it developing briefly for Po as he goes from off guard to at least getting his chopping hand up. Shame about the bowl though. And now we all get the gist, Po has to just grab a dumpling off Shifu, unsuccessfully. First up close and personal before widening out as Po goes for more expansive swinging motions in desperation. And it's a great excuse to show off that beautiful landscape. Up next is push-ups, now with a licking chance to reach the food bowl. Dude doesn't even seem to notice the hot coal at his stomach. And also, it's evening now. Time is passing. Atop the very peak, we have a balancing trick now, glowing in that sunset aura very briefly shown before we swipe away to our next scene, with a little pizzazz in the transition. It's the whipping again, but this time Po is readier, able to kick deflect a few hits before one good gut punch takes him out of commission. The food is always safe though, that's nice. And though Po is improving, he's not perfect yet. Here's a shot with no food at all, but Po now has the choreography locked down. Are we sure this isn't just an excuse to bring out stunning environments? Push-ups have become finger pushings in the misty morning, and right after Shifu looks on acceptingly, we're back into the whipping action. But by this evening, in the glowing gold aura, Po can now hold his own little by little until we come to a full-on traditional layout of several bamboo-y backgrounds and harsh colors. Po now saturated in blues and reds before the panel splits out into three for multiple angles and just some choreography on the side ones, and the middle panel expands and spins around from the bird's eye view as other panels roll in, like this classic sunset mountaintop composition. Whoa! That certainly went everywhere all at once for a second, but it is a fantastic display of fan service to the aesthetic they're going for, what with traditional Eastern art imagery now animated into moving panels like this. And with all that burst of training over, we settle onto one final test with a slow cross dissolve onto a bowl full of dumplings, as Shifu comes in with his offer.
After you, Panda.
Of course, after everything we've seen, Po is suspicious, camera wide out, almost expecting something big to catch us off guard again.
I vowed to train you, and you have been trained. You are free to eat.
And yet, Shifu continues onwards, sitting settled up on yet another jaw-dropping landscape. More sunset glow, up a mountaintop that reaches even beyond the clouds. An absolutely mythical place.
Enjoy.
Keeping on guard and refusing to settle down like Shifu has, it's kind of funny how Po refuses to move, conserving energy where he can.
Hey!
But you knew it was coming. Also, I just have to point out, since it is from this moment, this particular frame you might have seen online before. A beautiful hidden gem of an Easter egg the animator snuck in there. I wish this was more of a common thing, to be honest, just funky frames. Remember this other one as well? Oh, I love it. Shifu's even looking directly at the audience here. Of course, there's one final test.
I said you are free to eat. Have a dumpling.
And he's taunting him too. And of course, Po, being the dumbass he is, continues unknowingly. Hey! This time with an aerial kick for a bit of variety and a very gloating chewing face. Po finally gets it now, and so the music is ready to kick in.
You are free to eat.
The camera dramatically turning around Po's face as the drums start to beat in as he's starting to get serious. And in the first move, the camera pans up as Po's attempt to scatter the dumplings fails as Shifu can just scoff them all there, leaving one final one, now with a bird's eye view as the flying dumpling becomes the center of attention. And then, in a pretty simple slow-mo shot, it's taken from under Po's nose, literally. This isn't too fancy a camera trick, probably because this isn't too advanced of a technique from Po. Dude just tried to catch it with his mouth with no interruptions? What did he think was gonna happen? But though Po should have been defeated in one fell swoop, that's not the point, and Shifu kept the dumpling around for its true purpose, a proper fight. And clearly, Po is ready to fight for it. It's a chopstick battle, keeping it small scale for the early beats, and it's an interesting new dynamic of a battle. Cartoony goodness and still entertaining. But now we're done with this frame within a frame from the bowl shot, it's time to scale up. As now the bowl itself is part of the action, redirected this way and that way by Shifu to deflect from Po, and finishing off with a dramatic zoom in of both of their close-ups as it becomes a battle of wits for a moment. One seemingly more confident than the other, but Po is still determined despite it anyway. As it now becomes a game of shuffling cups, a new way to outwit your opponent in battle, as well as a good bit of foreshadowing for the final fight, as this very same technique will be coming back later against Tai Lung. Ironically, this final test of reaching a single dumpling will be thematically reflected as Po becomes the deflector over the dragon scroll later. By then, the student would have become the master of this very dynamic. Very cool. Anyway, Po successfully catches the thing, something that can't exactly be said for Tai Lung later, and it's celebrated with a little score beat too, and of course that woo. But Shifu isn't done yet. Still close up with a face of confidence, as he is the more dexterous with the pair of utensils, and even taking it further beyond the chopsticks now with his physical fingers. It's another step in the classic case of scaling up. First from dumpling to chopstick to bowl to fingers themselves. And as Po is forced more off the frame and off of the table, he chooses to expand the battlefield himself. Jumping back out to a bird's eye view of the whole table as Po darts the bowls to the side. And again, a stepped back wide angle as he hits the soul dumpling in the air. Only for Shifu to similarly retaliate with... Now reaching boundaries of the battlefield we haven't touched before, far beyond the tops of both of them. It's time to get moving for that prize. Of course, now presented in a newly heightened camera shot looking down on the two of them. And for the first time, Shifu looks surprised at Po's spryness. Not expecting to be caught, I guess, since last time reaching such height was so easy for the guy against Po. Or maybe it's the fact it was done with chopsticks after all that. Also, again, you gotta love some of these frames, like this one where Po looks like he's swinging Shifu at Mach 10 speeds or something. But in making sure this fight scene isn't just a good one, but a great one instead, the environment of the battle is actively moving as well, as the two look up and pause as the dumpling itself is continuing to drag along the chopstick. A time limit and quick time event prompt is brewing. After all, it'd be too boring to just have it stay stuck up that tree all the time, right? What follows now is a ground fight, as both bide their time for that inevitable drop, and of course this is Shifu's advantage, swooping around Po with his speed to knock him on his back, though for once Po lands it. And with this super wide shot we see a re-attempt at this as Po continues to cling on to Shifu. This time it actually works though. And just like that, all strategy goes out the window. Now that we're here for the QuickTime event, the camera once again goes slow-mo as Po just amateurly reaches out tongue first. But it is a nice opportunity to point out the radial blurring in this moment that centralizes around the dumpling as it's the main objective. Though the shot also keeps Po in focus, which is a neat juggling of focus on the two of them. And now we come to the interactive element of the score. Every hit is met with a beat that makes the whole thing feel so much more electric. I wish movies did this more. My only major reference for this is Pikmin, but you don't need to hear me ramble about that again. Still, of course, Po fails again here. First jabbed with a chopstick to the chin, and then the dumpling kicked far away. Again, expanding out the battlefield to evolve over time. And with a moment to think, Shifu finally opens up his real feelings of joy over these successes. And who needs chopsticks anymore? This battle has evolved beyond that. It's time for the signature staff instead. Perhaps this time with less successive hits. And so they fight alongside the hillside, now with Po deflecting each hit perfectly and juggling that dumpling occasionally too. And though it could have very easily been a series of close-ups for every successive deflect and dumpling hit, having the camera stand away and approaching the sequence as more of a one-shot very much ties into the cinematic signature of Eastern martial arts films, where the focus is often on the actor's choreography in one big take rather than the sensationalized Western approach. There is still some of that in here since there are cuts, but considering this movie is one big love letter to the martial arts genre, it would of course make sense for the camera work to have some of the same signature techniques. Very, very cool. And in one decisive move, Po steps on Shifu's staff, actively disarming his opponent and leads into the air to relocate the dumpling. A move that truly astounds Shifu with pride. And he even has that superhero landing too.
You're gonna do superhero landing. Wait for it.
demonstrated with the lowest of angles onto Poe's pose to highlight he has reached his maximum power in one fell swoop, and a nice little lens flare on the dumpling for extra drama. Not to mention, in general, this color palette is great for having such a bright background color against our figure of black and white. Makes the whole thing very stark and nice on the eyes. And Shifu can do nothing but smile in awe of Poe's massive feat. Success. And so, Poe has finally earned his soul dumpling meal. Only for one last surprise as the camera looks away from Poe.
I'm not hungry.
Not only has he evolved as a martial artist and a kung fu warrior, but as an emotionally mature person as well. Not needing to become so childish around food and knowing when to eat and when not to. And it's a new source of pride for Shifu too. And so, with that final test passed and a new sense of accomplishment on both their parts, they bow as is tradition, and we cross-dissolve to our next scene, bolstered up with our new and improved protagonists. Well, I would say that if this wasn't the moment where practically everyone else gets destroyed. But that there was the scene that changed Kung Fu Panda. It is the turning point of optimism of plot that finally upgrades Poe from a bumbling idiot into a Kung Fu Panda. Albeit in quite a goofy way. And the presentation of it all is just stellar. A fantastically creative battle sequence from start to finish. And the quality was so much so that it even sparked a national debate over in China about why Westerners had made a better film about Chinese culture than the Chinese themselves, which is certainly quite the accolade to take on. I just wonder if the sequels will live up to that foundation. I hear they do. I just better get around to actually watching them someday. I have covered a shockingly low amount of DreamWorks movies on the Scene series, so let's fix that today. Megamind. This is one of those underperforming movies with a cult following nowadays. Truly ahead of its time and always with the superior form of a minion. But which scene is best? Which is the one that really changed the movie? Upgrading from a good movie to a great one, what with its theming, its narrative, its messaging, and its execution? Well, of course, to me, it has to be the first real fight between Megamind and Titan. Sure, I know, the scene everyone really likes to talk about is the Metro Man one. Look, they're there for a single frame. Did you see on the other side of the screen? Wow, gee willikers. But this one cuts right to the heart of the messaging and comes with quite the warning for the future. So for some context, in case you haven't seen this movie since it came out in 2010, woof. Megamind is the supervillain of Metro City, and Metro Man is the superhero. But he's gone now. So without a hero to play a role, Megamind goes out of his way to make his own hero. After all, he isn't here for real villainy. It's more like a fun pastime for him. Being victorious isn't the goal, it's all about the banter on the side.
Well, I think your warranty is about to expire.
Maybe I got an extended warranty.
Warranties are invalid if you don't use the product for its intended purpose.
And so, through various events, technologies, and teachings, he created the Metro copycat, Titan. Created by upgrading the loser reject cameraman Hal, who's been the sidekick to the main love interest Roxanne through the front half of the movie. And though she has been warning Megamind of the dangers of this new Titan persona, Megamind is here to provoke the next city-sized battle.
Okay, Titan, it's time to go down with style.
And what better way to do it than with a gigantic, clearly evil mech to destroy the town. And of course, with some AC/DC in the background to keep things popping culturally and giving me a hard time finding clips I can actually play. And so he wreaks a little havoc, being so daring as to walk on the road, stand atop buildings, and calling out to Titan with provoking fireworks.
Challenge me, if you dare.
It's all about the presentation after all. But then, in a non-cliche turn of events, Titan doesn't show up. And a nice way to tell it by having the soundtrack just fade to the end of the song. Time passing and all that. Very simple, very nice. So what's happening here? Why is Titan not keeping up that status quo? Well, upon going right up to his home, all Titan has to say for himself is...
Megamind, you're actually the guy I want to see. Also, there's a door here.
Why is this my humor? What is wrong with me? Anyway, clearly Titan isn't Metro Man, and it only becomes clearer when Megamind darts his eyes to the side of the room to see...
Where did you get all this stuff?
It doesn't belong to me.
Ruining the entire facade of hero versus villain and coming straight to the core message of empowering a guy like Hal. Superpowers don't necessarily make superheroes. But of course, Megamind wants his fight. He wants his oomph, his purpose in life as a villain. But when Titan offers up a deal like,
We could rule the city.
You want to team up?
that completely goes against what Megamind is after. After all, this is just meant to be some jovial fun to him. He's not genuinely evil, just kind of raised that way. Meanwhile, Toten's motivations have been pretty clear.
I only took the gig to get the girl, and it turns out Roxanne doesn't want anything to do with me.
He's only here for a reward, and to him, that reward is the woman he likes. Even when he was powerless, all he desired was his love interest, who he breached the boundaries of through sheer ignorance or disrespect. And when bolstered with powers, he took this all the steps further, trying to recreate his vision of a romantic, superpowered interaction whilst ignoring all the signs of disinterest and not taking no for an answer. A weak boy like this sees power as the be-all, end-all, the one thing that everyone desires and will be granted rewards for having, which just isn't reality. But to him, and many people like him, it is. He's not likable because he has power, he's unlikable because he is him. Whilst on the flip side, in a much less subtle manner, Megamind is composed as the new head of Metro Man, saving the girl as the hero of the city. And so he's disgusted that Titan is out for his own personal gain, disappointed by his own creation, but still, he wants his fight, so he will manipulate the field to have his little way.
I'm your space dad.
Revealing to Titan all the tricks up his sleeve. Space Dad was the form Megamind used to build Titan in his superpowered image, and with Titan a little more on edge over this method of deceit,
You tricked me?
Megamind takes it even further with,
I'm also the intellectual dweeb dating Roxanne.
all very true, and specifically the thing Titan was complaining about earlier in the scene, literally connecting to his fixation on Roxanne, and certainly likely to strike a bone. And you know exactly how well this is going to be received with a guy like Hal.
When I get my hands on you, I'm gonna...
Yes, I know.
Finally, all the pieces are set for the reboot of a classic, hero versus villain fisticuff. Specifically what Megamind wants and hasn't had ever since living in a post-Markiplier world.
Oh God, how I've missed it.
An early first strike, unexpectedly landing mid-dialogue. Well, unexpectedly for Megamind. I think it's pretty clear to the audience how much Megamind is underestimating Titan here. And so he retorts with a jolly,
But evil returns with a backhand.
getting right back into it with his banterous back and forth, not too unfitting from that warranty talk from the start. Not that Titan has much to add other than... Though the camera does some fancy moves through the action, following Titan, having him evade the frame and zooming incredibly close on Megamind's portrait shot, before we get that classic composition of a sign complementing the foreground, as Megamind plays stealthy with a gigantic mech somehow, before we next come to a Scooby-Doo corridor type shot, tiptoeing road to road before sneaking up on our subject. Titan now adding to the conversation with,
I wanna see what that big braid looks like on the pavement!
okay, a bit more R-rated in tone for this kid's movie. Yeah, it's a little dark, but one swift punch into a building will fix that. Not entirely sure if there's an extra gag here or if I'm just spoiled, but off he goes again.
You fell for the oldest evil trick in the book!
Provoking on the run and dodging punches like a pro. Megamind has the experience after all, switching our camera angle from head-on to side-on without cutting away. It's nice. Only to lean further into simple camera tricks done efficiently well with...
God!
where the momentum was built up in the pacing, only to twang it back down to static. Really feeling the weight of the hit, if either of these guys could actually feel pain. And now for those who aren't processing the themes with your eyes, we'll get it in dialogue as the fight turns into a sword fight with streetlights.
Now it's time for some witty back and forth banter! You go first!
Megamind is playing an entirely different game, shouting out the names of his moves with every swing like a cartoon character, all the while Titan is just fighting for real, taking it entirely seriously and just about keeping up because of the gap in experience. Still, Megamind is in genuine danger that hasn't quite clicked onto just yet. And so, to bring this battle on the streets to a close, Titan eventually gets the classic upper hand.
This one's for stealing my girlfriend!
Always with the girl on his mind, as the camera does its classic tropes of slow-mo for impact, hurtling Megamind miles into the sky.
This what's for Space Dad making a fool out of me!
Genuine pain and sadness in his face. Feeling humiliated as a great aggressor for someone who cares about weakness and power as much as him. And finishing up with sending Megamind through all the floors of a warehouse building. A true finale of a fight.
Well done! I thought that battle went really, really well.
But of course, we can all clearly see now that Titan is not here for the theatrics and the cliches. I mean, him landing at all already came with the next hit.
This one's for Space Stepmom! You lied to her!
Ironically, probably the first non-selfish frustration point, though it gets shoved under the rug.
You can take me to jail now.
Oh, no. I was thinking more like the morgue.
And there it is, empowering a sad man like Hal with the powers to do whatever he wants brews not heroics, but corruption. And Megamind has real mortal danger, the likes he's never had to genuinely concern himself about up till now. In a single sequence, Titan has fully revealed himself for all of his true colors, abandoning his post as a superhero, stealing for personal gain with little otherworldly concerns, and willing to murder for their own satisfaction over something as trivial as a disinterested romantic interest. And so the fight scene doesn't end there. Narrowly dodging the laser eyes of lethal intent, Megamind runs away for the first genuine time, like he has a protocol for such a thing in the first place. Ejecting out of the rear, high above the city for his bots to handle the fallout, now dragging him across the skies far less eloquently as the camera matches his uneasiness. Titan following smoothly, fueled by rage. A seriously horrifying thing to run away from. Camera skimming along the road as cars blaze past, Titan flows across the frame, and explosions are abound. Hurtling Megamind to the floor one final time against the sorry sight of the emblazoned road, and Titan appearing from amongst the smoke. Ominous. And with one final initiative, a final saving grace, a literal cage to contain Titan, the sequence has finally ended. After all, Megamind learned from Metro Man. After hearing that,
Your weakness is copper?
Megamind made this as a backup. Very, very Tony Stark.
It's the very same metal used to defeat Metro Man?
Well, there that goes. Titan's unrelenting determination to move forward and finish the job is actually horrifying. Unbridled and unmatchable rage that's seemingly invincible is just awful to think of having to run away from. And of course, with the city's understanding of characters, it's time for them to interact finally too.
Was saved! What's your name, new hero?
Amongst a crowd of joyful onlookers, what is Titan's response to this sense of praise and adoration? You already know where this is going. He's got tunnel vision for one person, and he's too stupid to look for adoration that's actually easily found, albeit misplaced, elsewhere.
Oh, I wouldn't say free. More like under new management.
And so with that, we finally end our scene. No stitches? With any other scenes today? No. I really should have made this a month ago. Andrew Tate existed back then. But that to me is the scene that changed Megamind, for it is the penultimate display of Titan, our newbie turned antagonist, twisting up the medium in ways of deferring from the cliche tropes of classic battles, as well as hooking right to that theme of heroism and what it means to be a good, desirable person. Not to mention, it's just incredibly fun. The physics, the camera motions, the witty banter, even if it is just one-sided, and all in all, pretty ahead of its time. What with the archetype of Hal-like people being much more common these days than in 2010. My god, why has society gone downhill like this? Regardless, this is the scene that breaks the conventions of Megamind as a film and reintroduces it in a brand new light. And it's part of the many moving cogs that changes Megamind from a good film to a truly great one. So I hope you enjoyed. I love you too, random subscriber. Assuming you subscribed, by the way, you better have subscribed. But for now, I'll end it here. My name's been Daz. You didn't really care. Yes, that one frame moment with a slow-mo Metro Man was pretty cool still. Let's talk How to Train Your Dragon. This is up there as one of the greatest trilogies out of the whole DreamWorks set. This series right here is one of the emblematic animated movies of all time. Is that too much to say? I really don't think so. And the fact that I haven't covered it yet is criminal and paradoxical. What's worse is, I haven't even seen the third movie yet. I think it's because I see these movies in such high regard that I kinda don't want it to end. But it did, ages ago now. And we're pedaling back to the very start of it all. To the original How to Train Your Dragon, and the best scene to break down. Of course, every scene is a masterpiece in its own right, with some fantastical themings to go along with it. But today I wanted to cover the most iconic in this iconic franchise, the bit everyone remembers the best. It is, of course, the scene where our two titular characters meet for the first time, and kick off the first beat in their unbeatable adventure. For a bit of backstory, don't worry, I'll keep it brief this time, this is a fantastical Viking-inspired world where dragons are hated by all. On the two choices of, wow, dragons, what mystical creatures they once were, but gone for centuries they have been. I wonder if one day these magical beasts will return. And the other one, this is definitely, Jesus Christ, so many dragons! How do we get rid of all these dragons? Kind of territory. Hiccup is naturally our wimpy protagonist who's gonna bridge the gap between humans and dragons, and for conflict reasons, he's the son of the chief of the whole dang village. And after a large battle last night with a horde of dragons, Hiccup successfully shot at the fabled Night Fury, and after a scolding, has ventured out the next morning in search of his chance of acceptance.
He's probably out there now.
All the while, his dad has always been concerned for how different his son turned out, unsure of his identity despite being so sure of himself when he was his age. Hiccup forcing himself to be something he's not in order to try to fit in, despite clearly not. And on that reveal that his son is likely continuing to disobey him, by venturing outside to cause trouble again, we cut right to his son doing exactly that. First, a bird's eye shot of the glorious mountains for some environmental artist's resume, before cross-dissolving over to Hiccup's map, very simply establishing that Hiccup is well out of the boundaries of their civilization and has traveled extensively in search of his claim.
Oh, the gods hate me.
And since this is a scene with just a single character right now, there's not exactly much in the ways of dialogue to express the thoughts of our characters other than physical actions and randomly talking to oneself, scribbling out several crosses in a clear display of frustration for being unsuccessful yet again at a task they had given themselves. Hiccup is a character full of self-loathing at this moment in time for being the abject failure he is, or as his father puts it, every time he goes outside, something terrible happens. If following the orders of his fellow men, Hiccup would be shackled to a life of standing still and simply staying out of the way. It is positively embarrassing, unfulfilling, and kind of emasculating in this clearly masculinely built society. It's the foundational motivations pushing Hiccup to go past his comfort zone. It's a crying out for anything of value to be struck upon him, to gain any sort of approval and need from his group. Until that is found, Hiccup remains as an angry and self-hating character with little redeeming qualities. Everyone must hate him, even the divine gods as far as Hiccup is concerned.
Some people lose their knife or their mug. No, not me. I managed to lose an entire dragon.
Saying it right out for us, Hiccup has even lost his victory dragon as well. Even in his victories, which no one else seems to believe or acknowledge, he fails for not being able to confirm or gather the kill. All the while, check out the environmental background. It's a deep and dense brownish forest with a thick, dense fog in the background. Thematically, Hiccup is so incredibly lost. Not to the point of not seeing 1 meter in front of him, but enough that he cannot dictate his place in the wider picture, both literally and metaphorically, as he has no esteemed place in his world right now. Add to that the color palette of his costume, similarly blazed in grays and browns. His character is unfulfilled and drab, with no driving inspiration or form of content other than a grumbly objective to dig themselves out of their self-worth hole. Ow! But against this expansive forest, gigantic in scale compared to Hiccup, we have a breakthrough, a literal breaking, as it's a step in the right direction to all of Hiccup's wishes and dreams, but not before establishing him as a weakling just a little more. It's a pathway downward, the trajectory of the fallen beast, which now switches up the camera. No longer are we cutting between distant shots and back to up front. It's now all a one-er, following as we too come to witness this revelation alongside Hiccup, matching the timing of witnessing the result at the same time as his with... It's just a tease of a view, but an entirely natural one. There may be too many damn dragons, but they are still mystical creatures. And seeing one up front in this context is a lot different to up close in a hostile way, as we now cut again to Hiccup's front, obscuring himself with some of that trilogy, both as a way to soak in his expression, stunned to have witnessed such a creature with a hint of optimism for perhaps the first time in his life, plus it means we don't get to see it as much, keeping the audience retention time up high through a lack of exposure. Until we do slowly get the reveal. But still not entirely. First, there's Hiccup's giant head in the center of the frame, not even in focus, but obscuring us from seeing it even more. And even as it does slowly move out of the way, the dragon itself a fair distancer, partially blocked again by the rocks on the surface. Again, enough to keep you intrigued, but still not giving away the full satisfaction. Cut back to Hiccup, who's to go through a whole mini arc of his own through expression alone. He knows what he has to do, but deep down knows it's not at all his field of expertise. After all, just the fact that Hiccup came equipped with only the smallest of daggers shows how woefully unprepared this boy is. Clearly having a tool not fit for killing an entire living dragon, let alone a downed one. But alas, his desire to push forward and pull himself out of his dire circumstances carries forwards as Hiccup switches to determination, now that he's done nervously jittering the knife around. Well, kind of. Though his determination may be clear, his true feelings are present in everything his body is telling the audience. Not only did that knife come out ill-prepared and certainly not from a place of control, but even Hiccup taking a few paces forwards comes across as terrified and unskilled, needing an exhale just to make such minute progress. Everything in Hiccup's body is telling him he doesn't want this, and thus the conflict builds. And yet, with another mimicking camera motion, this time even more so as it's full-on first person, not third person, we get to see the dragon more up front and see that it is totally tired and completely unconscious. The idea that this beast is a threat quickly disappearing as it is demonstrably not even present. And so we see Hiccup start to grow in confidence due to the simple miscommunication here that he thinks that it is dead.
I did it. Oh, I did it. This fixes everything. Yes!
It's a cause for celebration as Hiccup comes to terms with the domino effect this update brings, whilst at the same time not necessarily fooling the audience on the idea that the beast is dead. Not only because it's on the movie poster and a more modern audience is aware of the concept of this trilogy and also the fact that this is a trilogy series, but also just in the camera position. For a moment of true victory, you would usually expect a similarly optimistic camera effect, be it a simple low angle to bolster up the scale of our character, or maybe like a spiraling motion around them, or to look up into the sky or something, but there's none of that. It's just a static shot where Hiccup doesn't even look that grand. It's the camera telling us he's wrong by not reacting at all in comparison to him. All these subliminal techniques to influence how the audience is to perceive this first interaction. And then...
I have brought down this mighty beast!
Kicking him down yet again. The beast isn't dead, and even just the smallest motion has Hiccup jumping right back to a rocky wall. The camera following with him more handheld this time with a bit of a swing to it. It's uneasy, just like Hiccup is. Now we're really getting somewhere. And Hiccup is right back to that scared little boy he really is in a confrontation, sending his knife out with no real plan of action, not even using it correctly. With barely any movement at all, the dragon has all of the control in the scene, for their opposition being so clearly out of control. And then we get... Whoa, incredible piece of cinematography there, and apparently it was an accident at first. Apparently it was always to be shut, that eye, but an animation glitch had his eyelids open. So they plugged it in with that out of focus wing as a motivator for the transition. This is just iconic, and the soundtrack only brings it in more with that slow drawl and the symbols on his iris reveal. It's all there to build up a slow tension with the slow camera motion, just to pay it off with a single intimidating non-movement. Ah, so good. And it's not even an expression of outright hostility. You can perceive it this way, but it's more like a suspicious watching. After all, Hiccup doesn't exactly come off as blasé as, say, any of the other Vikings in existence at this point. Any in existence at all. Perhaps Hiccup's shortcomings as a worthy foe was actually a plus that saved him from certain maiming. Or maybe the dragon could just naturally sense the kind-heartedness behind the boy. Not to mention, Hiccup doesn't jolt when seeing the eyes either, instead just staring as well, as the dragon's gaze turns more into a sense of, so, what are you gonna do? Hiccup's response again seems unsure, pitiful, empathetic for the first time, even loosening up more the closer they meet each other's eyeline, only for the conflict of the scenario to continue forwards.
I'm gonna kill you, dragon.
Even just surmising those words first requires a full inhale and exhale. It's a difficult task to commit according to Hiccup's body, but it's one his mind is devout to carry through with, just calling it dragon like the beast it really is. And for once, the camera is empowering, albeit only slightly. We're at a low angle now, as Hiccup is in the position to make the killing move against the dragon haplessly draped over a chunk of the frame. But will he really follow through with it?
I'm gonna cut out your heart and take it to my father. I'm a Viking.
These words are hyperbole. As the camera moves in to become more low-angled and less on the dragon, Hiccup is being strengthened more in our perspective, but his words are particularly harsh. Even the act of knifing out the dragon's heart, excluding the idea of even a merciful death first. It's the words he has ingrained to take on. It's the concept he is hoping to become in order to be accepted. And judging by those brief moments out of character, it's so clearly not him. It is just his idyllic understanding of what it is to be a Viking.
I am a Viking!
And though he is assuring that he will reach this stretch goal of his, after his words come out, there's that little expression of doubt. Plus a clear stature that is not that of a standard muscular Viking. Intercepted in the middle is another shot of the dragon's eyes, now with Hiccup in view, unchanged. As if the dragon itself doesn't believe the words he is saying, or is now hoping to reach out to his better nature. All these interpretations can be extracted from the same damn iris, it's incredible. And so comes the final moment. Hiccup lifts the knife above their body, the camera jumps to a close-up of their face, no dragon even in sight, like it's readying for a death off-screen. And then... he opens his eyes. It's a moment of sympathy that is unavoidable, trying to do so far by just looking away or closing his eyes the whole time. The dragon continues to stare, judgingly, unafraid, wanting assistance and sensing a friendly nature in him already. And all it takes is an extra long take and a swelling orchestra for Hiccup to finally react, most like himself than he ever has done before. No, not yet. First, he's got to reiterate it. He can't be swayed so quickly. This is his entire livelihood here. This is everything he needs to fix his issues. So he goes for it one more time, keeping those eyes shut to ignore the pain, and even the dragon too seems to have acknowledged and accepted their own death. Everything is lining up for the exact success Hiccup has been wanting, but he doesn't want it. Not this way. It's just not him. As the orchestra stops, so too does Hiccup. He's just not an aggressive person. He can't attack a wild animal, much less an injured one. It's just not right. He hates himself for it, but in a different way to how he usually hates himself. This isn't an act of self-defense. This is simply an act of cruelty if he were to go through with it.
I did this.
There's even a sense of remorse there. So now he looks at this at a different perspective. He did this. First, an act of valiant victory, a win for humanity, dominating against the strongest subspecies of this demonic creature. But also, he did this, wounding a wild animal, leaving it defenseless and trapped in the wilderness, unable to move, let alone feed itself. It is Hiccup coming to terms with the consequences of his actions, shed away from the peer pressures and celebrations of this barbaric behavior. It's a turning point against the very upbringing he has been given back at home. Now shot equal to the dragon in the two-shot as they are both of equal value. They are both a single life. neither more important than the other. And so, we now switch from focusing on the eyes of the dragon to focusing on the body, trapped, entangled in a web of ropes. It is the dragon's dilemma we are addressing as our perspective switches to one of more empathy. And with yet another sigh on Hiccup's behalf, armed with the exact tool to help this injured creature, the music is uneasy. First that smash when the eyes jolt open, and then the scratching violins as Hiccup scuffles to cut each rope loose piece by piece. The dragon staring down at Hiccup, surprised but not delighted, as it is still a wild and confused animal, culminating only into perhaps one of the more naturalistic responses. First, it's a wide angle, showing us a bit of that scale difference with the dragon's full body. Then it's over the shoulder for Hiccup's horrifying perspective, and then following as he's pushed back to the rock by the neck. Such a visual interaction. Camera shaking with the impact as it stops at the rocks. And then over the shoulder on the dragon as we look down to the feeble Hiccup, pinned down against the darkness, covering half of the frame. It's a demonstration of power cinematically, and a demonstration of power from the creature. Finishing up with that crescendo against the full face of the beast, and a little lick of bagpipes in there too for some classic Scottish goodness. It's just a stare down of dominance as Hiccup is reduced to speechlessness. Eyes of anger and yet control, peering down at Hiccup as the main theme is remixed into this bagpipes motif. Bracing for what can be perceived as a finishing move for the dragon, preparing its body, pulling back on Hiccup, and then blasting from the mouth. But no, it's a simple roar this time. A similarly merciful move in response to a merciful move. A warning shot, if anything else. And though still a horrible sound that visibly shakes the camera, it's more like that of a pet, as is the inspiration for the animated moves of Toothless. Everyone knows this fact, but references of real cat movements were used to motivate a lot of their movements. And just as quickly as it responds, it flees, actively screeching to the human not to push it, not to follow it, and not to do that again, as it leaves the scene, over the shoulder kind of from Hiccup's view as it disappears behind the leaves. The composition now returning back to more of those foggy background trees that were missing for the most part when Hiccup was alongside the beast, only for us to follow along with some more telling shots. This isn't the end of the story, and the dragon is not without weakness. Clearly still a wounded animal of some sort, struggling to fly straight and impacting with obstacles along the way. It may put on a brave face, but it is still in need of some sort of assistance. Not as absolutely powerful as it previously was. And leaving Hiccup practically out of breath as its howls can still be heard in the distance. Once again powerless with this indifferent camera and a pose that's clearly vulnerable. If not for his next action, standing idly by as the creature continues onward, vaguely holding the knife. Not contributing to the scene as an active member, but more like a lowly observer. And then dropping that emblematic knife of his hostile intent and masculinity and falling to the ground from his shaky legs. An understandable response, but one of weakness nonetheless. As we then cut right back to Mr. Manly Man Father. This scene doesn't actually do too much on the action front. It's a relatively simple scene. But it's the foundation that sets up a very slow relationship build-up that leads to an incredible story. With Hiccup's conflict and self-worth coming to the forefront against a clearly very wild animal with an assortment of emotions of its own. Eventually being explored more for its pet-like attributes, Hiccup's place in his society, the symbiotic relationship the two can create for each other in a way that benefits both, and the eventual confrontation of this entire friendly interaction against the clearly dragon-despising collective that will be expecting answers. It's an iconic scene from an iconic series, and who'd have thought one of its most iconic features was originally a bug in some animator's program. It's an Aardman production. Classically British, collecting celebs, and for some reason disappointing me when I first watched it as a child. But I finally rewatched it a good 17 years later, and man, I really enjoyed it much more the second time around. It was the last of the DreamWorks collaboration deal, but gave us a unique hybrid of both the stop-motion Aardman design process alongside actual CG animation. Though it does look basic. It's a bit of a whiplash, but look at Roddy's human home. Yikes! I would say it's a surprise I didn't notice at age 10, but I don't think I even realized it was CGI at all back then. So, the scene that changed flushed away, huh? My first thought was the moment Roddy shattered the ruby. It was the only one I could remember from my first actual viewing. But no, sometimes in this series, I just want to talk about the scene that's the most interesting. Does some cool stuff. It doesn't all need to be the depressing second act. So today, we're highlighting a scene full of gags with the interception of LeFrog. Giving you some context, Roddy is a prim and proper pet rat who's forcibly flushed away down to the sewers one day and desperately wishes to rise back to his home. On the trip, meeting Rita here and tangling with our villain, the Toad, who's been chasing after Rita's ruby that Roddy just went ahead and smashed since he recognized it was fake anyway. And now, on their travels actually making progress home despite all the hijinks, the Toad has instructed his French cousin to retrieve the item. Now the master cable as that got stolen too. And Rita and Roddy have just made up after a brief row.
Wakey, wakey.
Thank you, Dr. Blowhard, for that one. Gotta love how they just have a full-on klaxon taped to the boat. And more than that, there's a fish girl, can of beans, a Weetabix box, and a giant tire. A real junk punk aesthetic that this world has, from piecing together all of the scraps that comes down to this underworld. Only the best for the jammy dodger. And of course, a great gag to wake up any children that got a little too invested in the sleeping scene before this. The gang are finally making progress, and their goals nearly accomplished.
We're getting close to Kensington.
The poshest of the posh and the locale of Roddy's home base, if not for a certain appearance. The reveal of the hench frogs. Oh, sorry, the French frogs. With an introductory motif that sounds a little like I'm walking the outskirts of Fallout 4, making their appearance in quite the cartoony fashion, somehow stuck to the actual frame of the shot. It's creative. It's quirky. We love it. And of course, a joke on non-diegetic soundtracks. For keeping your eyes glued to the cinema screen, these 5 seconds alone are a masterclass of it. Followed by how this is going to affect the duo directly.
Ah, thank you.
You're welcome.
With another classic frame gag of an unknown hand assisting, much to everyone's surprise. Again, revisiting a mid-2000s movie, this feels like kind of the tropes that's been long forgotten to time. I don't remember these happening as much in animated movies anymore. But now that their cover has been pretty intentionally blown, it's time for introductions.
Bonjour. 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 Bonjour.
And that's not just hellos, that's on beat too. Just another extra flair of cartoony humor that this film wants to cram into this scene. And it's certainly not gonna stop there.
Who invited you on board? Hop it! Hop it!
Starting off with just some simple punny wordplay, because they're frogs, but what we're really going to dive into soon is French stereotyping jokes. Aardman is all about British idioms, whether that be the variety of accents across the British Isles, poking fun at Americans from this side of the ocean.
Oh, these Brits don't know the first thing about football.
As will become especially clear, teasing our neighbouring countries and having them tease us back. It's fine if they're anthropomorphized into animals and also harmless, light-hearted jokes. Every country does it to varyingly different groups of people. Whatever the justification.
Ah, the English little girlie. She's so aggressive.
Ugh, Le Frog.
Here he is, our real central character of the scene, the cousin of our main antagonist, the Toad. This is LeFrog, aptly named for his defining feature, an excuse to make fun of the French, as well as mirror back at us Brits too.
I like a woman with a little fire.
That one might be a little dated, but it is the start of immediately humorizing our new antagonist. The movie's been doing this with every hostile figure, as it makes the whole plot seem more enjoyable and less intimidating for the little kids like me a young 17 years ago. If you haven't seen the full movie, you might have at least heard this line.
Keep your legs straight when you hit the water!
I kept my legs straight, Spike.
Anyway, LeFrog has instantly made a fool of himself, from rejection and his stupid doofy fate. Time to cram in a reference to croissants, of course.
You're going to pay for that, my little chocolate croissant.
He's a cartoon character. He's more French than even French people, since we're in cartoon logic. Whilst also, we're still looking down at him, so it's not a dominating stance he has over the scene. What a goofball. Add him to the collection.
But first, a word from our sponsor.
Oh wow, this movie is more ahead of its time than it realized. Don't worry, I haven't got a sponsor lined up this time. And if I have, well then I guess you've already seen this bit. Sorry about that.
Marcel?
Naturally, one of our French frogs is a mime, and his name is Marcel, a reference to Marcel Marceau, probably, a French actor and mime artist. His Blip the Clown character even has this little hat attachment that's mimicked here. So what's Marcel's whole bit? Well, performative art, of course. What, you thought it was gonna be mime the whole time? That'd be awful for attention time. No, of course, the old flip phone attached to his chest is to come into action for the Toad reappearance. None of this is needed, but it's a fun comedic flair to add to an otherwise kind of expository scene. And another French gag snuck in there, the phone's ringtone is a chiptune French anthem theme.
I should have known.
Well done, Le Frog.
Funnily enough, it looks like that French henchman in the back teleported to between takes so he can eye up the two of them from within. Strange. But nonetheless, we've made it now to the central gag of this scene. Marcel's contributions to the Toad monologuing.
I salute you, sir. Now then, Rita, hand it over.
Several things going on here. For a start, the Toad. 2 is not being empowered by the cinematography. He's just another talking dude, neutral to the camera. In fact, from Marcel, the Toad becomes the comedic fool as his gestures are overpresented, immediately belittling him for more entertainment factor. And that little is another French stereotype snuck in there from Le Frog. And finally, we've got the pronoun game, not clarifying what is wanted to allow for more conflict.
Hand what over?
And oddly enough, not clarifying is just more padding, to be honest, since Rita legitimately doesn't know it's the Master Cable he's after, as much as she's also just being smarmy and calling him out for being vague. Only for the real reason we've diverted the conversation to this non-answer.
This dance of deception must end. Return what you have stolen from me.
Your usual villain-esque demands, with a flair of the humor. French accordion playing in the background as Marcel's actions dominate the scenes, from taking his metaphorical lines a little more literally. It's silly, but it's fun, and the mime even starts whipping out a giant pencil halfway through. Hey, at least it's not a baguette like I originally thought.
Enough dancing!
I don't have it anymore. It was a fake anyway.
And so the chat continues. What is otherwise boring and already known information is now more investing to keep your eyes on, as not only does the Toad actually acknowledge his doofy demeanor thanks to Marcel, but the camera now starts to break the illusion as we see behind Marcel as he replaces his hat whilst clearly still being blinded by the back of the flip phone.
What? Oh, the ruby! Oh!
And now with Marcel doing his initial duty to make a buffoon out of the Toad, it's time for the Toad to do it himself. Sure, Marcel is still taking it a little over the top, but now it's time for a maniacal laugh that goes on just a little too long. And even Marcel and the frog have something to say about it. And so do the frogs behind them, glancing at each other.
He's cuckoo, but family.
Oh, this is rich.
And that wasn't the Toad doing. That's all Marcel. He's so good of an actor, I almost forgot. Anyway, in keeping things light, what was a minor antagonist now leans against Rita like a companion, always switching sides since the stakes of everything aren't all that high. And some of us always love an excuse to turn on each other.
The ruby was a pretty thing, but nothing when compared to the Master Cable.
There's your plot progression, eventually told in dialogue, yet also drawn out in an almost Shakespearean fashion through the Toad's affinity for dramatic monologuing. Now's also probably a good time to mention that the Toad is voiced by Ian McKellen, and he's killing it as usual. That's a man who loves the acts he's given, and is happy to dive fully into it. Though this film has dragged things out so much, I skipped over one more delay it took to reach this point, with Marcel pinching a French frog midway through.
Stop there.
Which is actually another French-exclusive reference to Napoleon, who would apparently pull the ears of his intimates as a sign of affection, and became a badge of honor for his imperial guard. Anyway, the Master Cable is finally the subject of discussion.
The Master what?
The The cable!
Okay, I guess we're not there just yet, but I think though that this is probably my favorite joke of the whole scene. It's well established that the toad, is at the mercy of Marcel behind a video screen and playing with it in this new fashion by just turning literally from his side of the screen when that's not how physics work here. So simple, yet so well done, and the sudden cutoff of delivery is great.
The one you're now wearing, as a belt.
And this bit's just a functional reveal. That's where the belt is, out for all to see. Who knew it would be such an important plot piece?
What do you want it for, anyway?
Oh, you'll see. Come the World Cup final this afternoon.
Ah yes, this is a British film, and you of course can't have a British film without mentioning football. This film all centers around the World Cup from start to finish, and it's our timer for the climax of the movie. Also, the question comes with some extra characterizations, as not only does Rita overrule Roddy's idea to just hand it over, it looks like even Left Frog is curious to know the Toad's answer to why he wants it. Everyone's invested in this story and happy to break party lines to learn more about it.
Okay, cousin, take a breath. Leave it to me.
Though not breaking lines enough to not come to the Toad's aid when he's coughing up. There's a hint of familial love in there somewhere. How wholesome.
Kill the rodents, and then me and my team can settle down to a decent breakfast.
And now that the dialogue is over, it's time for visual storytelling. As LeFrog and his hench frogs ready to take things from here, we get a standard eyeline match to Roddy's observation, scheming for his next move, whilst also sneaking in one more French gag that all they think about is breakfast. Is that one true? I feel like I could relate to that one a bit. I'm not French, I swear. And now the scene is readying for action.
Okay, men, to action!
We surrender!
No, not that one, you idiots!
Oof. This is a British film after all, of course we're gonna poke fun in that direction too. In the World Cup footage, we could also see that the football game is between England and Germany.
England!
Yes!
Germany!
Boom!
Live this Sunday!
So this film's happy to target in all directions within a near vicinity. And as they finally get on the same page, we're greeted with... We've once again got a display of buffoonery to make every villain seem funny and unthreatening right at their best moment. It's just the style of this movie's writing. And so it begins.
Fly at 12 o'clock!
Oh, bother.
It's frog logic, where apparently seeing a fly causes an impulsive need to attempt to grab it. Look, even Marcel breaks character and the Toad does so while behind a screen. Idiot. Only LeFrog has the tenacity to actually stop himself as everyone tangles to the same coordinates. A French kiss, if you will. And in one fell swoop, everyone but LeFrog is disarmed and strung away. It's time for a 2-on-1. Even odds, if not 4.
Roddy! The rapids!
More environmental drama, and our first viewing of these slugs. They're kind of like an early Minion prototype, present in the world to provide background noise, reactions, and pop song references. Also, LeFrog is pulling on Rita's ear over her lines, fighting like a kid in a kid's movie. What follows next is a real action sequence. Roddy up in the forefront steering the boat as we see Rita and LeFrog slung around at the tail of the boat, as the wides reveal the boat inevitably falling down the danger pipeline. And with us distracted on the bigger picture, this comes as a swift surprise, and another Frenchly reference in the dialogue.
We're going over!
And that weak slapping gag returns, unexpected in a new way and always subverting expectations. Meanwhile, the camera juggles the bigger crisis by showing Rita's view for the camera to leap from and pull ahead for full attention on the water full ahead. Thank you, slugs. Always bringing in a little comic relief to the more tenser situations. I'm not sure if I want to say I miss this trope of marketable characters, but it certainly is a little endearing to look back on. Or maybe it's nostalgia blindness, and this can totally apply to Minions too. Now showcasing the full scale with a simple camera motion from boat to looking directly down the drop. Seems unpleasant. Even LeFrog reacts to it. Whoa, a character design gag. This fight is playing dirty with rules I didn't even think would apply, but I guess we all at some point noticed LeFrog wearing a giant zipper. And just in the nick of time, they're saved by a feature of the boat that was established earlier in the film, for your classic cliff drop scenario. But though rats can't hop, frogs are much more advantaged.
Take your flippers off me!
You stupid English with your Yorkshire puddings and your chips and fish!
Naturally pinning the English for all of their cultural faults. I too regret Yorkshire puddings. He's got a good point there, to be honest. But don't you ever attack our beans on toast. And with a couple more French lines.
Au revoir, ma chérie. 1, 2, 3!
The boat is dropped, though it's a long drop, so there's still time for one last move.
Nibble for your life!
Well, this is a cartoon after all. Of course there's gonna be some free-falling physics that work out perfectly for our protagonists. Though you can catch Roddy noticing the parachute asset beforehand. Though it's just a carrier bag from British Airways. But with an updraft in this pipework...
My bell, I think.
They're prepped for the final word in. That dance, by the way, is another French reference to their can-can victory dance. And from there, the two rats are lifted up to their intended destination anyway. LaFrog just doesn't feel like using his tongue right now. But first, there's one last emotional beat to tackle this moment. The first we've seen, actually. This was entirely a comedic scene up to this point.
Goodbye, Jammy, me old mate.
Rita must say goodbye to her old ship, miraculously animated for one final wave. I wonder if anyone ever cried at this death. I'd call that impressive. And for anyone that likes the proto-minions, they survived too. And with that, Rita and Roddy reach up to the realm of the surface with a skyline view of London.
We're over Kensington!
Their prior dangers escaped from officially and now ready for the next adventure of finally getting Roddy back home. And that was the scene that changed flushed away, or at the very least, it is a slightly new spin of the usual type of scene we cover on this series. A wholly comedic one, stuffed full with all sorts of gags in the visual, dialogue, and thematically continental. A masterclass in entertainment for writing for kids if your target was anyone but me. I don't know why I didn't like this movie the first time. Guess I never liked the idea of minions even back then. But I'm the minority around my peers who love the idea of this movie. Just a shame box office wise the results agreed with me. And any future collaborations between Aardman and DreamWorks stopped here. But coming back to it 17 years later, it was a fun romp. Incredibly cartoony and unrealistic. England would never make it to the finals of the World Cup. It is literally never coming home. At least the movie stopped at halftime. Not even in fiction do they win. For now, my name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. How many times did I say the toad this video? Well, sorry, talk about beating a dead toad. Over the Hedge. Why is this movie so shoved in our long-term memory? I feel like this 2006 movie is the one all of us remember the most for some reason. We don't rewatch it these days, do we? Are people still watching Over the Hedge 17 years later? Well, I am today, as we're covering the scene that changed Over the Hedge. Had you asked 9-year-old me, I would have told you it's the moment all the bad guys get eviscerated by a machine so theoretically painful that I actually felt a little bit sick after watching it. I mean, they all still deserved it, but I didn't like the empathetic secondhand pain I was imagining during it. But no, this is a tale way bigger than evil laser cages and some big garden hedge, as the core of this story is all about finding your people. It's about sharing, and low-key about the conspicuous consumption under a capitalist society that produces too much waste and damages its environment. But rabies squirrel is super fast.
Air freshener, tomato juice, cork.
Cork, don't you dare!
So the scene we're gonna dissect is the turning point where it all goes wrong. RJ here is our raccoon protagonist who's been saddled with debt against a giant ominous bear and has joined a group of fellow critters to help raise up the assortment of food. Initially telling how it's for all of them, but in actuality is gonna be all for the bear. Betrayal at the heart of this new family, and it's all found out in the middle of the very last heist.
I've got about this long to hand over that wagon load of food to a homicidal bear. And if these spuddies aren't on the menu, then I will be.
And so, with the truth finally revealed and no time to explain, RJ must run out with his tail between his legs, abandoning the gang in the midst of disaster. And what's more... everyone else is caught and left behind. Left to the devices of a biohazardous house, the Karen to defeat all Karens, and an exterminator with an affinity for an exterminator with an affinity for unethical cruelty.
No, not humanely. As inhumanely as possible.
Cut to our real scene. It's the moment that RJ finally reunites with the bear. This main quest has been looming over his head the whole movie, and though we haven't seen him for a good hour now, it's time to actually confront the bear. With the good ending, if we had no context of the plot and development in the middle. Starting off high and wide as the lone wagon is pulled up the hill. Jittery and slow since this isn't really a moment of success, but one of bittersweetness.
Wow. Vincent,
and followed by a close-up shot of the same event. Like most scenes start out, first you have your wide establishing shot before zoning in on the topic of the scene. Except it's not just about RJ pulling the wagon anymore, our antagonist is now in focus, but only by audio. Keeps him ominous for the moment to reveal him slowly. We must fill in the gaps ourselves based off of the raccoon's expression alone.
So I was on my way down here to kill you.
Keeping up with that slow reveal as we switch to an eyeline match of sorts with this over-the-shoulder shot of RJ's perspective. Deep dark woods with little to pass from as the bear is camouflaged within it. All the more scary that we can hear him, but not see him. Only until he moves and chooses to reveal himself do we realize where he is and what he's doing.
But I stopped to watch the show.
He's domineering both the conversation and the scene as he continues to reveal himself, nonchalantly walking forwards because he's completely unafraid of danger. Meanwhile, for RJ, Vincent stands tall and overbearing. All of the threat comes from the bear.
And I gotta say...
And if you weren't getting that this is a tense scene, RJ's reaction should tell you it all, as he has to look all the more vertically to even keep eye contact with Vincent, positively petrified against words that aren't even scary yet, though the delivery's pretty gruff. That's Nick Nolte for you, who I thought sounded exactly like the cast member for Carver in the Walking Dead game, but apparently that was someone else entirely. Still a badass villain voice.
That right there is a thing of beauty.
And then our shot of dominant malice turns to unexpected companionship. Not necessarily a genuine one, but unexpected nonetheless. As the bear steps closer and then leans down, taking his giant claws not to slash and poke, but to spin around and give RJ the same binoculars he had at the start of the scene. Figuratively and literally switching RJ to his team seemingly, as the betrayal the raccoon has committed to his own people is one that impresses even the bear. And now's our real eyeline match as we hop specifically into RJ's binocularly perspective, seeing the results of his actions. This whole time he's been turning a blind eye, walking away from the event so as to not think about it. But now that he's stopped, no longer chasing the bait of his food debt, he can turn around and witness with his own eyes the destruction he has left in his path, by his own hands. With his prior family being hauled away in cages.
That is the most vicious, deceitful, self-serving thing I've ever seen.
Really hammering it home that RJ did a bad thing, whilst also presenting two very different character reactions to the same event. Of course, naturally, our evil villain bear is incredibly ecstatic over such a cool event, since he revels in it, and has done so himself many times in the past. But for RJ, this is an admission of guilt. The camera slowly moving closer and closer as the intensity of Vincent's words build, and the pressure grows on RJ to acknowledge the misdeeds that he's done. Removing his binoculars to showcase his distraught face, devastated to see the dire circumstances his friends are having to go through.
Classic RJ.
And what's more, this adds on to RJ's character establishing. He's always been the sly kind of character, obnoxiously making his way around and conniving his way through situations. The RJ we meet at the start is unheroic in many ways, just another overconfident douchebag, more than willing to step on a few other critters to get their way. But he's never had to address it fully like this, and he's never felt such a strong connection to other people before. This is RJ coming to terms with the kind of person he is, and coming to the decision of whether it's the kind of person he wants to be.
You take the food, and they take the fall.
Now full-on match-cutting to the words of Vincent and the actions on screen. The abduction pulling back with each shot to show more information of the context they are in, as well as bringing us back to RJ as he's having to handle this internal conflict within him. And as he just sighs to himself in despair. The exterminator drives off with an illegal U-turn because this guy is also an unredeemable antagonist of a character. It's seemingly the final chapter for the rest of the gang, off to some undisclosed area and soon to be out of sight from RJ.
You keep this up, you're gonna end up just like me.
And there's the kicker. You keep this up and you'll end up just like Vincent. A badge of honor from Vincent's perspective, of course, but a marker of mistaken life choices to anyone else. What is this life that Vincent leads? He's alone, he's feared, and he's greedy. He hasn't got that familial comfort. He's not supported by any of those around him. He doesn't even get to enjoy the thrill of the hunt for food. It's just delivered to him mostly. He's a glorified loan shark. Or if anything, he's the closest example of becoming human-like, except in the late-stage capitalism outcome that this suburb is dealing with. And is that really a perfect life to lead? That's the subtext of the messaging. All while this line is being delivered, Vincent is right in the foreground, but he's not in focus. He looms over the majority of the frame as his influence has greatly obscured RJ's world onto the path of wrongdoing. But that's not the highlight right now. Even RJ isn't properly the focus of the shot. It's the van, way off in the background, careening to their murder spot. That is all RJ truly cares about right now, as that is the immediate danger, not for himself, but for everyone else that he holds dear. The bear doesn't matter in this moment, though his words are emblematic for what RJ wants to do for his next move.
Having everything you ever wanted.
But I already had that.
And there it is. It's your plot point 101. Your character from the very start of this movie may have wanted exactly this. He paid off all his debts and perhaps may have even earned the respect to eat some of it himself, or at the very least get the next batch for himself afterwards. But in enduring the events of this film, he's come to discover something else, a sense of comfort and support in a makeshift family. And though it's different to how he started, that is now everything he could have ever wanted. And what he has now is no longer aligned. Again, Vincent isn't the focus as he scoffs on some Pringles. We're keened in on RJ as he's tackling the internal decision for himself. It's the subjectivity that matters, not the objectivity.
What? Them? Who are you kidding?
And now, even as the bear notices RJ is stuck on looking the van, he comes around to join him as we too continue to witness the van making its directions at an intersection. Also, a fun little tidbit, look at this road design. This movie is also taking a stab at your classic American suburbs urban design planning, because this is desolate. It's not normal to be inaccessible to necessities without the use of cars, and this plastic, overproduced design layout is all the more fitting for the background themes of this movie. Anyway, sorry, just weird to see as a Brit. We're surrounded by 20-minute city designs, you know?
You said it yourself. You're a family of one. Always will be.
Yep, that's a line RJ said near the very start of the movie, the most emblematic line of the entire film in regards to its main theme.
I'm just a desperate guy trying to feed his family.
You don't have a family.
I'm in a family of one.
It's a family movie, and the independent lone wolf of a guy is to find his tribe and betray them across this movie. It's directly looping us back to the start of the film to see the progression our main protagonist has made, and it makes sense that Vincent is the one mentioning it, because not only was he there, but it's practically the last thing he heard from RJ. So it will be fresh in his mind.
It's how guys like you and me survive.
You and I. Anyway, the use of survive here is very manipulative here. They're not surviving because they deceive others, they're thriving. This isn't a last resort choice to save their own skin, it's done this time out of malice. They could comfortably gather food for themselves without shooting down others, but this is a cognitive choice. It's not a matter of survival, it's a matter of malice.
So a few saps got hurt in the process. Tough. That's life.
And now we have Vincent's perspective on the gang. Just a few saps, so he says. No words of respect or acknowledgement, just belittling them down to pejorative insults. And probably telling that he's had a few run-ins himself with fellow saps and chosen to let them get sacrificed along the way. If RJ is to fully commit to his action and remain on the path that mimics Vincent, then he too will have to look onto his friends as just sorry saps. Collateral damage, and that's clearly something he doesn't want to do.
Trust me, you don't need them.
Actually, I do.
But we're coming out onto the other side. Whilst Vincent is cemented on leaving others behind, RJ just doesn't have it in him. He's not that kind of person, or at least, not anymore. Against all of his new experiences, he's come to the conclusion that he does want to align with the family, and the camera now bolsters him up too, giving us a low angle of empowerment as he stands large on the frame, for possibly one of the first times ever this scene. Moving in on him as we reach the climax of his conclusion.
And right now, they really need me. So I really need them! this!
And with one last glance at the van, noticeably getting closer and closer to us, RJ rushes out of his designated spot, pushing on the giant Fu cart side on so we maximize its movements, the large load of it now not grinding him to a halt, but empowering his strength and resolve. And much easier to push down a hill than up. And that van heading southwards was signalizing that it was coming towards RJ the whole time. Of course! We were looking at his perspective, or at least his eyeline match, of course. So the actions up on the hill can impact the trajectory on the road, as the Fu cart now becomes a sort of battering ram to invade the van last minute along its commute. And from there, a whole action sequence explodes onto the frame, from food explosions to bear slashes, drama with the gang, and smashing windows, swinging around the driving, balloon savings, crashing the car, and dealing with a coming to exterminator. But that is all very much a different scene. This short little scene here was the one I wanted to focus on because it's the key turning point for our character from a douchey, conniveling anti-hero to one who is part of the family. After a few minor rejections.
Thank you, yes, yes!
This is the turning point of the movie that dictates his character the most, and it does so with some awfully in-your-face dialogue and a whole lot of eyeline matches. It's the turning point that literally has RJ stop in place, turn, and choose which action he wants to take. Though let's be honest, everyone's favourite scene was the Quicksilver one. We love a Quicksilver scene, and this was one of the first. At least it's not the one that made me want to vomit. And finally, that's all she wrote. There are of course still all sorts of DreamWorks movies we haven't covered, but I think I'd milked the Scene series plenty long enough. Despite oftentimes Pixar and Disney usually being the studios seen as being the best animation production, I think DreamWorks has a really solid go sometimes. A little bit hit or miss, but when they hit, they really hit it out of the park, and hopefully the last 2 hours have only gone to show that all the more. For now though, finally, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this compilation. Do tell me your thoughts. What's your favourite DreamWorks scenes? Or tell me what's the best of the latest DreamWorks movies that came out after the series ended. I'd love to hear all your thoughts and more, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Bye bye!